be right back. Carry on.
Jen Jaros, do you know when Menafee will have the course options published? Sometime in mid-March, I'm assuming.
I'm trying to think if they had a goal. I can't remember if they said. It's coming.
I don't think they
Be
said.
patient. Just be patient.
No, it's the worst time of year for me. I'm just like, come on. Spring break is coming, and so is the Menafee catalog.
Yeah. I don't think that they said. Oh, Shelley, you were there, right?
That's
Yeah,
okay.
they didn't really say
That's
because
okay.
they were waiting to hear back. They had to kind of pare down what they were going to offer because it's all virtual, it's all virtual. So
Yeah.
but the dates are right. And they know the pre-con. Well, no, they don't know that yet.
I think they have one pre-conference person for sure. I saw that on
Yeah. The plans are pretty set. It's just there's a lot. It's a lot to organize.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Hi, Karen.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you today.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So how's it going? How was the week? Warmer weather and all that?
It's very nice.
I want to thank Jen for being a part of the conversation this week, the legislative committee. Thank you for stepping up and speaking up.
Well, oh my gosh, you guys. 196 was represented hugely at that meeting. I couldn't believe how many people you had from your district there. That was amazing.
Timing is right. Sometimes it's just the timing, and it works for people.
I can't get my staff to
talk
do
a little
that.
more about that.
Go ahead, Jen. I'll let you take
Well, I don't know. I think Karen, you're a little more informed, better suited, but there was a Ed Minnesota lobby issue night. Usually those kinds of things are held live, but it was virtual. And so who were the Pinto and Davney and Isaacson and a good handful of legislators were there. And it was a partnership with Isaiah. Is that it, Karen? Is that right?
Minnesota.
And so really talking about, childcare and talking about just all programs that serve families with young children and really just storytelling, telling the stories of different childcare providers and different Head Start people and lots of ECFE folks were there to just share stories and let them know what we've been doing. And it was great.
And I think part of it was working together, which is we have been fighting for the same money for years. And it's just so wrong. It's not helpful. And so I think what they're working on is how we can work together and value that. And one of the things that I stood up about is so often the emphasis goes into children, which is a very important emphasis, but parents are the people who care for the kids. And so we've got to work with the parents. And I sometimes parent ed just gets put by the wayside, or it's like, yeah, we'll let somebody else take care of it. And we have to fight for it. Our ECFE funding is, anyway, I could go on. You guys know this. I'm not telling you what you don't already know. So that's why I was there, because I just really want to take a stance and make sure that parent education is not lost and then loses funding.
That's so awesome, Karen. Because honestly, even within the program, I feel like parent ed gets forgotten about all the time. Our professional development is almost exclusively focused on direct child interaction stuff, which is great. And I appreciate it and I learn it, but it's never stuff that has to do with adult learning or helping parents. It's never that. So I have to add it's like it's a step removed. I have to add a piece of figuring out how to make this work for helping parents. And definitely once you get outside of the program, everything's always only focused on the children directly. Not remembering that the parents are the ones who are with the children all the time.
Yeah, and then Susan, you sent out that email about the FACT program. Thank you so much for doing that. And I have worked in different districts and in different wings where they have parent education programs coming into the school system. And then it's this blanket approach. It's this, here's the recipe, you go do this, and it's always tied to the school outcomes. And it's not about, well, what about the parents? And even though the parents are involved, it's so scripted that it's really not parent education. It's just, this is what our school believes. And so again, we're looking at the systemic pieces of how schools are set up and then pushing that on to parents. And I think it's really important that we do things that are more grassroots of where are the parents at and what's going on, and it comes from the ground up rather than from the top down.
Right.
So, and it comes down to the money. It's the money. It's the money.
Right. Yeah, that, thanks, Karen. That piece, anyway, it kind of gets into engagement, right? Parent engagement, family engagement in schools. And even so for instance, in the American Education Research Association, AERA, the closest I can get to parenting ed is the family community engagement, right, in schools. And as we know, engagement looks very, very different and can be defined very differently than what education is, right? And that's partly why I like the Head Start parent family community engagement framework. Defines engagement or articulates engagement in about 6 or 8 different ways, including family education and including family peer connections, right? And so it's nice because it isn't my problem with programs like FAST, and they're lovely, and again, they've been well funded and they have really good research, is that engagement often means parent teacher conferences, right? Or math night, or volunteering in the school, or things like that. And most schools, even though, again, like with Head Start and Joyce Epstein's work and stuff, engagement has been teased out to be from something relatively minimal to something really profound and deep and looking more like parent education. What my experience is that most schools don't get past that, just that superficial, or it's like a outreach to specific family groups, right? And then it kind of gets to who cares and what numbers are they counting. And really, and even like with the FAST stuff, they're almost apologetic by saying we found all these wonderful benefits to parents by building their networks. Of course, we really don't know if it helps that much with kids' school, right? With kids' school outcomes. But we think, but this is really good for parents. And so anyway, and so as long as there aren't these really carefully defined outcomes on children's school participation, kids' reading scores, things like that, their graduation from high school, some of those benchmarks that they're really looking at, racial, sort of closing the race gap in terms of kids' participation and attendance. Again, and still over here, parent education isn't even being discussed, right? So anyway, but I know I've had many conversations with Betty Cook, right? And this has been the problem too with some legislators who have shown up for meetings that will default to calling ECFE family engagement, right? Yeah, and Betty is like the first one to go, it's not family engagement, and so it's another point of advocacy, but it is an uphill battle because it's, at least they're sort of like, what's good about family engagement? Well, there's many good things about family engagement, but one of the good things is it's a term that people recognize and it's related to families and schools. And then when you have research like this one that I just shared, when it does really similar things to what we do in family ed, it's data that can be used. And then to go beyond that and to say, but what we do isn't family engagement alone, that has different outcomes. And now let's talk about family education and parent-child relationships and things like that. So, yeah. Oh, you keep talking. I want to grab a book though.
There's so much that I know and so much that I don't know. And didn't they just put together, or in the House of Representatives, a committee, an early childhood committee was established? Now, of course, that's got to pass the Senate and yada, yada. But in that early childhood committee, what is the stance of parent education in that committee? So that's a question I have. And if anybody has any understanding, that'd be great.
Are you talking about the department that Pinto has?
Yep.
So I was reading about, I found a chart, somebody sent it out, maybe it was, I don't remember who, that showed like all the bills that are being proposed right now. And I saw that his committee has one proposed, but there isn't a match for the Senate. So that means that there always has to be that match. So I think it's right now, my guess, if I were to predict, and I don't ever quote me, but my prediction that it's an idea that will be passed on for another year.
Yeah. So dead on arrival right now, but we got to keep it live.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do we need to be collecting more stories? Do we need to be more mindful of the data we're collecting from parents so that we have, like, I don't have any stories from families. I mean, I'm sure I could send out a message and I could get stories. But is this something that we need to be really mindfully doing so that when we do go to these lobby days, we have this data, and it's not going to be numbers and graphs and charts. It's going to be words and feelings and emotions. I don't know, like, how do we collect that?
Well, that was one of the things that one of the representatives mentioned, how important those stories are. And the stories are what's happening now. So having the family speak up, because I said, well, if you want stories, we have stories. What stories do you want? And then I was thinking, I'm speaking to the choir. They don't need the stories. It's those who have no clue that need the stories. So how do we do that? You're right, Ellen. How do we do that?
So being a part of MNAFI, getting on the board, because between MNAFI and Community Education Association, those are the two places where the lobbyists call and say, hey, we're testifying, who do you got? So if you're a person that's got stories, or if you have a parent that's willing to tell stories, make sure you let, you can let me know those people, but be at those tables, because we do get asked to represent. And I can tell you what I do in Duluth is Week of the Young Child is our time of the year when we have parents writing postcards, just a postcard. This year it's hard to send mail to the legislators who are not in their offices right now. So we're going to put together a video, but every year we send postcards just with parents saying, thanks for continuing to support our program, and this is what it means to me. And I make copies of them. So I have the stories, and then we send them to our school board members. We send them to our legislators. We send them out. And that's how we kind of celebrate the Week of the Young Child, by creating relationships and having every parent fill out a postcard. And then we do a little handprint art, and we send that out too for them to put in their offices. But creating relationships with your legislators is the number one thing. Just like send them an email like, hey, I'm your constituent. I work here. I am a parent as well. And these things are really important to me. And I'm here for you if you ever have questions. And it's our job. Our job is to inform them. Their job is to be informed, but our job is to inform them. So.
Wow, Jen, that is.
Can we get you on video saying that? We need to put you on YouTube and then pass that out. I mean, that's exactly what we need to hear. And I think of gathering those groups of people within our district and other districts, and that needs to go statewide. And of course, sorry, I need to slow down.
Karen's
when
excited.
I was an ECFE parent in St. Paul, we used to every day have a day at the Capitol, and we would bring a poster that we had made. It often had pictures of parents and children. And there were some legislators who would take down the poster from last year and put up the new poster. And it was a visual that they were like, this matters to me. I remember it because I see it. And I think it's interesting that in making legislation happen, like the science is so important, the facts, the numbers, this does this, right? But what moves people, especially politicians, is never the science. They might use that to back up something. It's the stories. It's the individual experiences, right? Like the things that get the heart. And I was just talking with Katie Smith yesterday, because one of my passions personally is extending parent education to parents of middle childhood and parents of teens, late childhood, that we just drop parents off. The kids go to kindergarten and done, see ya, and it's like, holy cannoli, a whole new host of issues where you need support and education, right? Like parenting changes. And whenever parenting changes, you need support and education again. And with my parent educator from ECFE, when I was a parent who is now retired, we're doing a volunteer class on Monday and Thursday evenings. I'm just doing the Monday evening class. That's basically, I'm calling it like middle childhood family education or middle childhood parent education. These are all parents of school age kids. So like 6 to 12-year-olds basically. And it's been going strong for a whole year. Like people need this. And the number one thing that Katie said is, can you make sure you get their stories? Like, because she feels like this is the direction parent education is going to be growing into, and which really excites me that it might be possible. But it's like stories saying like, this makes a difference. I can now support my children and my family better because I have this support as a parent, kind of thing. How we go about not only getting those stories but disseminating them is another hurdle, right? But it's so important to get the stories.
And isn't that what programs like AmeriCorps is for? Can't we just get an AmeriCorps people or a Serve Minnesota person to come in and to gather those stories and put them together? I mean, I don't know. I'm done.
So sorry, I think it's partly the evaluator in me and the lobbyist in me, and also the person over time that sort of hears discouraging decisions, or sort of the thing about, threats to budgets and cuts and things like that. And so I totally know that legislative decisions are clearly not based on research and not always based on science. It makes me wonder though, and so here's my question. The stories about what? And Becca got to it, right? It isn't just, I think it's asking people to tell their stories, not just that ECFE means a lot to me, because I think that over time, then that's just going to be, why are we voting for ECFE? Because it's a popular thing, because, and frankly, there are legislators who are going to do that, right? It's just like, okay, I'm going to cut this program because ECFE is really popular with my constituents, and I don't want my constituents to be mad. And that's as far as they're going to go. And then they're going to cut something else, right? And different constituencies, of course, are very different. But I think that there are going to be those legislators who are pressured. And remember that early childhood folks have data. They have data, longitudinal data that will link, spending time in high quality, parent aware rated, settings, related children's reading scores. And we'll tease that out to show that it makes a difference for Black children and Latino children and Somali children and all of that. So that when you're talking about a competition with funding, right, something ECFE can't compete with is the data that those early childhood programs have if they're going to be in competition. And so I think I would just sort of move add to the idea of stories about what impact. Because, and I think that if Menafee or somebody can sort of articulate beyond just collecting the stories, and I totally agree, it's a great idea, and there's so many wonderful creative tools and things like that that you can use to do it, but maybe to also stretch out the question to what has my going to ECFE meant to my ability to be a parent, or my connection to social services, or my ability to get a job, or those sort of social indicator outcomes that legislators do care about, because they're getting pushback from other people going, we need to fund this jobs program. Exactly. Why are you protecting ECFE so much? We need to have this housing program. Why are you protecting ECFE so much, right? We need more money going to the schools for special ed, or for this diversity initiative. Why exactly are you protecting this program that frankly isn't it just for white mothers to come and drink coffee, right? So I guess I would just be a little provocative and underscore the value of the stories, because they do sell a lot. But I went to a meeting with, unfortunately, then Senator Franken's main guy, Dan Solomon, who's his education advisor. And I went with Katie, and Katie and I kind of presented a hearts and mind lobby, right? I mean, I had all of the facts and figures and the research, and Katie was like telling the story. And I got to tell you, it wasn't enough. I mean, I was glad that we went as a team, because clearly having one side isn't enough, but I would say the easy thing again, or it's not easy, but something that everybody can do is to collect the stories. And parents feel great telling their stories, and people love hearing stories, right? And so I would completely go along with that. I would just maybe encourage stretching out the prompt so that it's stories about what has coming to ECFE meant to you in terms of this, right? And to have a coordinated idea about what this is. And maybe it's not one thing. Maybe it's and I go beyond parenting, because again, that's a really generic thing in people's minds. And especially for people who are privileged, it's like that parenting was, I had highs and lows. I don't think it was that hard of a thing, but it's like, but what do we care about helping parents parenting around for what, like for what thing? So anyway, I'll shut up too. I mean, it's just, I would just push us a little bit to think about focused impact stories.
Well, and advocacy is tricky. It's tricky for parents who have never done it. They're a little afraid. And so the postcards were a good way. I'm just sharing my experience. Were a good way to find the few parents who were vulnerable to really dig deep and tell a real story. Because there were some, most of them were, it was just let's open the door to see who's interested in being an advocate, and then we could find really great stories. But you're right, like being able to prompt parents with just the right question is really valuable. And if you did the training or registered for the training, they sent us several documents, and one of the documents was kind of a worksheet that had some nice prompts for you to share with parents too, to start telling the story. So,
and Jen, I'll just hop on that and say, sometimes you can use the volume of parents as a proxy for impact, meaning that it isn't just the popularity, but if you have a few, we all have the parents who are, and this doesn't sound, but anyway, a little more articulate, right? And when they will tell their story, or they'll have, anyway, you can sort of capture that and say the relationship for this parent, or in her school, or with her child, or having these kind of outcomes, and then show the big tub of postcards from parents all over the place, and going, that story that you just heard from this parent, look at this tub of postcards from these other parents. I can guarantee you they have stories too. And then in the legislators' mind, or their aides' mind, it's like, they have that one impact, plus they have the volume. Yeah.
And finding the parent who's willing to be vulnerable too that's hard.
I think part of it is on us to have our radar out too, because I had one parent that was leaving the program, and we all know those parents that have graduated, how sad they are. I mean, they're in mourning. And I had one parent that made a comment just very casually. I really think that every new parent should be required to take these classes. And that's a pretty big statement. So then what I did is I came up, I wrote her name down. I have a relationship with this parent now because I've had her with both kids and everything. But then when it came to our catalog, I asked if she would be willing to write a quote. And so that quote where she said absolutely, and she wrote a beautiful thing. And so we've been posting that as a parent quote on our course catalog. And she even emailed me this past year and said, is there any way that we can extend parent education into elementary? And so then I took that to my director. And so I feel like sometimes we get little signs that people are really pro ECFE, or it's been of great value to them. And I think then reaching out and kind of, grabbing those people when we can, and then keeping that relationship and using it is an important thing.
Something that you just said there, Lori, now that we have digital catalogs, I think there's another way we can key those in to have more impact when people are surfing through the looking through. That might actually get the message out there more frequently than it is just in the paper one. I'm not saying the paper one wouldn't do it, it does, but I'm wondering if there's something that we can do where every time there's a click in an early childhood area in our websites, that it has a testimonial or something, just something like that. I'm wondering if we haven't made the most of that environment to have that strong message that you were just talking about come through. I just thought.
How many of you on that last, we do ours at a park and a picnic, on that last class are witnessing parents with tears? I mean, I can't, I mean, it's been so meaningful for them. It's, they found a place and a connection. And of course, we always really build up too in Mankato. We are your first experience to the district, your child's education. We're the first step. And then we also have noticed that people that have started an ECFE are usually the parents that go on to be in the PTOs, and their involvement in the elementary schools. And then of course the family relationships that we hear of all the time, that, well, I use it with my own classes. When my youngest son was a junior in high school, he had a poker night down in our basement. And I went downstairs and I took a picture of it, and I went up and I looked at the kids sitting around that table. Guess what? They were his ECFE friends. And I just thought, it just hit me because I never paid attention to that, and how you have those early connections and those strengths with families. Who the friends' parents are, you have a connection. I mean, it's just a building just such a good community. And so I think and I hear that all the time, we made lifelong friends, relationships, parenting relationships, not just child relationships, and it's family relationships, because we walked this journey together. We supported each other. I mean, I don't have to say all this stuff to you guys, but I just feel like, sometimes things like this come up and we just feel warm, but we don't go anywhere with it. So, and I'm talking about me too. I don't always grab it and use it and tell my director, hey, this is what I heard today. But I also do that with, I do, like, I just had a big compliment from a family on Tuesday night about our STEM class, which is not my class. I don't teach it. I don't. And it was such a strong comment. So right away, I just sent that to my director. This is what families are saying about the STEM class. Passing this on, letting them know, because sometimes in their offices, they don't know. We assume that they feel like we're doing good work, but let's tell them what the families are saying. Yeah, okay, I'm talking too much, but here we go.
Well,
Yeah,
can
just
I?
a-
Oh, sorry.
I just
Jenny, go
piggyback and
ahead.
just take a second to on your story. I did ECFE when I was a parent, and my son got married 2 years ago, and his best man was from 3-year-old ECFE, and 2 other boys in the wedding. So yep, you make those lifelong relationships, and people don't realize that, I think, unless they've done it before,
And that made a difference when my daughter was choosing who to date when she was in high school. I mean, not that she was being judgmental to others, but it's like, oh, we did ECFE. Oh, so there was more of a connection.
Mhm.
So it is lifelong relationships. And she didn't marry any of them, just so you know.
Well, so I want to comment on, Becca and Greta's idea, right? So I feel, I really feel the power of the stories. I remember Susan's report for, simple ECFE report in 2013. So there is a poster, right? So the PDF highlights all the function value of ECFE. However, I always remember the most was the testimony of the parents on the page at the top, right? So I use that I use that as a reference in many of my papers, like my master program paper, right? I could not, so it says like there's a Robbinsdale parent said, ECFE has been an indispensable part of my children's early learning experience. And it's this one sentence will, I was so curious when I saw that. I want to know why this parent said that this, from which part they benefited from this program, right? And then I would look at all the scientific data, all the data, sometimes data can be like a headache, when looking at data, just like Becca said in the, those authorities, right? So many times if we only provide the scientific evidence, that makes them, just too overwhelmed. But these connections, the stories, the testimonies, it can be very, very powerful. Just like Rita said, I looked at, I remember, so Harvard Graduate School of Education, I really loved the page of, their testimony from the students. I remember many of these touching stories, right? So they use that as a very powerful tool. And I see, like, if we look at ECFE website, Minnesota, many like district, we see all the catalog, the designs, the topics and the classes and the language, but we do not see many of this kind of testimony, the personal, the picture of the parent, right? The picture of the family and what they say. We do not want to make the story too long. We can just use a short of paragraph there, right? And then many of them, like, you can go on, you can keep going on if you want, right? So, and then if they, if sometime, like, if you can use, people think this is very interesting, I want to look more, you can read more, there's a link there, you can read more about their stories. So I think this, and also from talking about making influence on the legislation, we can think about it, just like Becca said, we can create a questionnaire, and then we can
maybe put these things together in our annual report, right? Annual report to our and to the district, and also we may. I remember, like, you know, there's, I do not, I'm not familiar with our politics procedure, but I know there's some petition, like people sign the document, right? So if we can help out, help our parents in each of our site, like sign like the annual, you know, petition, like to support ECFE and to the senators, or to, you know, to that. So is that something we can do? I mean, not only to just like give them the annual, you know, like update. What's, you know, how many parents are benefiting from our program, and how strong they want to support this program, right? So maybe just like that. That is, you know, something I'm thinking. Thank you.
On this idea of collecting stories, I have to tell you my favorite way to do it, or that I've done it. And it's a class where I had like an hour and a half with the parents. So it's unusual, but it was like a full day family literacy program. And so the stories that we wanted, and our director is always asking for them to use at school board meetings or things like that. Most of these parents were learning English. They're, you know, English was their second language. So not only that, but the evaluations that we use at the end of classes, I haven't always been a fan, and I haven't really thought they were helpful to me or for collecting stories. So I'm a really fast typer, and so I didn't need another person, but you could use another person. I got out my laptop and just typed and typed and typed and typed while they were answering questions in group discussion. And it was a lot of these things that you're saying, you know, that getting the impact of not only here with ECFE and your relationship with your child, but what else did this affect? And, you know, I sort of said, if someone were to say to you that, you know, we're not going to fund this program anymore, what would you want them to know? And they would just get all fired up with like, okay, let me tell you. And I gave that to my director in telling her that that I didn't want to do the evaluation. I didn't want to pass that out and have people struggling with the English and all these words that didn't make sense. And I was so happy to be able to print that out for her and say, look at this, look at this. Is this not so much more valuable than this checklist evaluation of questions that didn't really tell us anything? And now we have story upon story of how ECFE has impacted these kids and families. So if you have the time, or, you know, you want to do that like on your last class, it was a nice wrap up for the families too, to sort of all share and then cry together about saying goodbye.
And sometimes if you are doing, because they are pretty traditional, and even if even if you don't like them, a lot of administrators are still going to do the end of semester or end of year evaluations. Even adding that one open-ended question at the end that just says, what else would you like to tell us, right? Because it really, because it'll half of them will leave it blank, right? Some of them will complain about the air conditioning, or, you know, something like, or this, or, you know, that people are bringing sugary snacks. But every once in a while, you'll get somebody who takes the time and they'll write a really nice paragraph, or even, you know, a couple lines, but you know that this is from a Vietnamese refugee family, right? And that's really meaningful. I had the occasion a few years ago to do in-depth interviews with ECFE parents, and you know, for our Parentopia project. But for the first half of it, it was just about coming to ECFE and be a parent, and what being a parent means to you, and then coming to ECFE and what that and everything. And each interview was about an hour. And now I'm not suggesting this, because I have to tell you, the 25 parent interviews and 13 staff interviews took a year, right, to transcribe. But once they were, and printed them out. I used to carry around like these 25 things with me all the time because I just felt it. I just loved reading them. I mean, and the questions, I mean, because they would speak at length, and I guess my point is this: if you have the opportunity, and I think Carrie was getting this too, is you can record small groups of parents. You could invite parents in for an interview, but we all find that sometimes beyond those targeted questions, that just like our conversations, right? We start out talking about one thing, and by the time we're done an hour later, we branched into gold, right? And so, another way would simply ask parents if they're comfortable and just interview them, ask them to tell their stories, and then just follow up like you're a 60 Minutes interviewer, with tell me more about this time that whatever. And, oh, that happened during class. What did that mean to you or whatever, that, at least then you can decide what you want to do with it. You'll have an MP4 file of it. You can, a audio file, you can transcribe it if you want to. And there are like digital transcribers now that are way more time saving, but it's again, technology is our friend here.
Susan, even just when you're saying that, it makes me think, yeah, and now we're in a pandemic. Who's to say that we can't just send videos if they give us permission? You know what I mean? Like, we really haven't done that in the past because we haven't had permission, or we haven't really had the need because we would go physically there. But this year we do not. And we would have a lot of, I don't know, gumption because they're asking us to do Zoom meetings all the time. A lot of people getting more comfortable with being videotaped. I wonder if that wouldn't be more apropos right now, just because of the state we're in.
And things like Flipgrid are perfect. Our 150 staff in Northfield did a thank you to the Northfield Hospital because they prioritized vaccinating teachers. And so we had 150 thank you videos. Wow. And we put it together in 48 hours. So I think Flipgrid has a 5-minute 5-minute limit. But that, then it's in their own words. So that is another really great idea. Oh yeah, Karen, TikTok. We could start like I don't know how TikTok works, but we could start like an ECFE page or and then everyone puts like a Jen's got it. That's it. That's our dance.
Yeah.
I have teenagers.
I just feel like we're in a place of transition where we can do things out of the box that in the past maybe we wouldn't have done before. I'm not sure that all of our ideas would work, but I just feel like there's something we can do that's maybe gonna hit it on the mark. I love those ideas, Ellen. Yeah, Jen, you guys, awesome.
Well, so what I think I didn't get to sharing is we're not doing postcards this year. This year we're doing a video. So I'm gonna go to each of our sites and just film some families and add in some verbiage, like a 30-second video that we're gonna share instead of postcards. So y'all are so smart. I don't know how Flipgrid works. Is it easy? All right, I'll look into it.
I think Flipgrid's super easy. My kids have had to do it for school stuff, and it's pretty simple.
Yeah, we use it in the parent ed program, and the university always loves it because it's a U of M product, and now they're making money off of it. And but it is really good for posting and then dialogue and having people post back. So yeah, as I said in my note, I think another advantage of doing the video, or having a group of parents say on Zoom and you're recording the Zoom session, so it's not traditional ECFE. It's a chance for parents to tell their stories about being an ECFE, and you put on, they all know that they're being recorded, and you just hit record and let it go and just facilitate that conversation. Can you imagine what you'd get in 45 minutes with a group of 8 parents? And then, like I said in my note, my experience, and some of my students will do this, their kids will be there, and their kids are sitting on their laps, and oh my gosh.
And you could do it as like an advisory council thing if you have, enough of the range of experiences and enough of the range of families represented and all of that great stuff, then man, you're going to get liquid gold from them. So something like that would be really, put a Zoom meeting together with your advisory council. And with the
Karen, do you want to, were you a part of the process in 196 and Shelley for the PLC? Yeah, like that you spent a PLC on. I have a copy of it.
Yeah.
But like, how did you guys break that down to get more stories, and then how did you? Yeah, talk about it.
You want to talk about it, Karen? Too bad Christy's not here because she kind of spearheaded it. But we do evaluation after every semester. We do three groups per year. And they wanted to get more from the evaluations, kind of like what you guys have been talking about. Like we don't like snack, kind of like what Susan was just saying. We don't want to hear that. That's not helpful. So it just kind of broke it down. And before we give the evaluation out, I mean, we had to do it digitally in December, but we spend a day, a class period where we go through a list of, and Ellen, you said you have a copy of it. It's just kind of a reflection of our semester together and kind of talk about some of the things we've talked about, and ask them, what's been meaningful to them. And we spend some time reflecting before we give them the evaluation so it's just a little bit more meaningful what they respond. They take a little bit more time. Usually we'll step out of the room once we've done the reflection piece of it and let the parents fill it out without us sitting over their shoulders. I don't know, Karen, what else do you have to add to that?
Well, I'm pulling the eval up right now. And
That's what I was going to do too, but
I could share my screen. I don't know if people really want to see it, or whatever. We can also send it out. But I think for me, it's what I notice is the way the questions are asked that give an opportunity for them to tell a short story, or to put 3 sentences together that explain what's important. And questions like, in what ways has your time to get? Oh,
hi, look at you.
No, go back. All right, I'm going to mute myself. No, I'm going to turn my video off. There's Shelley. Good. One of the questions is, in what way does our time together with your child? Oh, I can't see the rest of my video. It's not moving. Sorry, let me go back. It's not a video. Hold on. Or carry on. Either way. There it is. Okay, let's move it.
I have it here too, Karen.
Okay, so yeah, here. Okay, so yeah, the third question was the one I was looking for. In what ways has your time together with your child during class and at home impacted your relationship? So we got that relationship piece. In what ways? What are some ways your child has grown or changed as a result of their ECFE early childhood experience? So we got that how kids have grown and changed, and then what are some ways this class has influenced your parenting? So now we have their part of the story, and then we look at that, and those are coded. The answers with certain words or whatever are coded, and then that's where we pull our stories and our data from.
I just shared a copy. UG asked for it, so I just plopped it in there.
And then
maybe you guys don't want to share it beyond the writer world.
I think Christy's been pretty comfortable sharing it with who's ever asked.
Okay.
And I think, one thing then we do as a parent ed group, I mean, we have a big group, we have like 7 of us parent educators. So we have a big school district. And then we go through, once we get all the evaluations back, we go through and we split them up and we read them. And then we highlight areas of growth where people have intentionally, said, something that makes us think that what we did, helped them grow in their parenting or their child grow. And then, we kind of pass them through all of us. So everybody looks at everybody's, and that's pretty helpful as well.
I'm excited to use it because in the past I've done like tell us what you enjoyed. Tell us what you enjoyed. Tell us what your child enjoyed. Yeah. And you get words like, we like the sand table. And I'm like,
and some people still do that as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get pretty minimal responses, but if you really take the time to do that reflection piece with them before they fill it out, it just is more intentional for them. And I think you get better feedback.
I had planned on using it last spring.
Yeah.
And then
Then COVID. Yeah. I mean, we did it in December with and we ended up, online after doing hybrid. And I mean, it certainly wasn't the same getting the feedback virtually than it is when you're actually in a classroom with parents and you can, kind of talk to them face to face before they fill it out. Because sometimes, if you have a 14-week class, stuff that happened in the beginning of the year, they don't necessarily remember. But if you kind of go back and talk about it, they're like, oh yeah, that was, something that helped me or whatever.
The one that's in the chat is the one that we used this past in December. So it's got the digital learning components on there. There was specific data we were looking for. So there's another way to get the stories. And Carrie, I've done this. I know what you're talking about because I have done that with my family literacy classes. And it's just, that's why I do family literacy. It's like, my God, it's changed my life.
Yeah, my biggest advocacy is to be creative, and to like what we're doing now. This is what we need to do, right? Because as you know, like one size won't fit all, one method won't fit everybody. Not everybody will have the technology. Certainly not everybody's going to have the time. You're going to have different groups of families that, I mean, one of the biggest frustrations is if you try to collect from most people, is that most people won't show up. Or you do something one week and then the next week, like you have 2 people. So, it's just like, I think it'd be great to have like a whole, here we go again, ending our sessions with like another thing, like, wouldn't it be great if we had this, just like a list of creative ideas for how to capture stories, right? How to capture stories and then how to tell the stories, like how to, is it digital and you do, just a slapdash, here's a Padlet and everybody just gets on their phone and just types out what they do. And then, by the end of your 15 minutes, you've got your Padlet done and you've got your stories right there. Is it something more involved? Is it focus groups and you've got it, like recorded interviews that you can share, interviews that you can transcribe and then do analysis with. And you guys always need to know that if you need any, like, not that I'll do it for you, but like if you need any advice on like, how do I do that? Like, how do I tease out themes inside of things? Like, I'm happy to help you with that, right? Anyway, but I think the big thing is that there is no one way, and but there are certainly recommended ways, and there are efficient ways, and there are cost-effective ways, and but also because of but if we have a variety of strategies, it's going to fit programs better, but it's also going to fit parent audiences better, right? Because there are parents that are shy, parents who don't want to have their images on, That said, I will say that for all of this stuff about parents not wanting to share online, or parents who are, like wanting to protect their children's images, that's horse hockey. Because I've been like pleasantly stunned by the number of parents that are so proud to like post pictures of their children and have their kids shared. So I would certainly always regard parent privacy for how they feel most comfortable in having their stories shared, but not to make the assumption that everybody's going to want to be anonymous or not have their children because they're so freaking proud of their kids. Anyway, but yeah, I think this is great, you guys. And as I mentioned, as you're talking about, we asked about this, and this, I pulled up the ECFE evaluation instrument because only to share it so that you could see the way that items related to what it meant to my relationship with my child or something like that were worded. And from a sort of a geeky side of it, because we did do testing with that instrument so that it was reliable and valid, what that meant was that over and over, when people would respond consistently, we knew that the way that things were worded, and this was not Susan coming up with that wording, this was a whole team of you all, this was Beth, and anyway, a bunch of people, they're all Menafee folks, right? That were wordsmithing hours were spent wordsmithing those items so that and then having them translated into Spanish and Hmong and Somali and, different languages. So I just share them for wording, if that's at all helpful to you. The one of the things I wanted to share while we're talking about this idea of networks is this book. It's called Unanticipated Gains. Some of you may have seen this. It was written a little over 10 years ago. And it won all kinds of awards. It's called Unanticipated Gains, Origins of Network Inequality in Everyday Life. But what this guy did is that he went into childcare and early childhood settings, and he was doing research to find out about, mostly looking at traditional child outcomes, right? And looking at settings and how they related to kids' learning and stuff like that. And what he didn't, and why he calls it unanticipated gains, is that he heard by watching the families how meaningful their interactions with each other was to their lives, and the networks that they created, and how that setting connected them to community resources. And so that, again, because the focus is usually on children and parents, on people to get kids to childcare, it was surprising how meaningful this early childhood setting was to the parents and to the well-being of the parents. So that link to the Global Family Research Project mentions this New York researcher and everything like that. And I just wanted you to know this is who they were talking about. So we've got a few more minutes before 1. I see a couple people have left, but
I have one really quick question. So you guys were talking about family literacy programs. Ours has completely died. And I am not sure, we've even moved closer. Our building now is even closer to the highest population of our Latino community. I think it has happened in conjunction with the church that is right across the street from the trailer park is doing, it's in a Baptist church, and they are doing some adult basic ed and English. But we used to have a robust family education program. It was 3 days a week. We had ECFE Tuesday, ABE Wednesday, childcare. I mean, and we had 10 to 12 families, and now we have 0. And I don't know if the family needs have changed, if we need more. I don't really know how to fix it, or if it's even my job to fix it. But I know families, I just don't even know how, is it adult basic ed's problem to fix? Like what do we do to get back? I mean, I know we have to combine for sure. But no one seems to be saying anything about it. No one seems to be concerned about it, but I'm just like, how do we get this back? And it's been dying. Like, this is my 5th year in Northfield, and the program has been, we were 3 days a week, then we went to 2 days a week, then we went to 1 day a week, and now we have nobody Tuesday afternoon. And I'm sure COVID has something to do with it, as with a lot of our things. But even when we had it last year, we had 3 families with no ABE component.
So I can just speak to what ours is like, Ellen. For us,
Yeah.
So I coordinated that program for a few years, and I haven't been working with that program for a couple of years now, but we always had a huge waiting list, and ours was always at risk for being cut because it was expensive for ECFE. It was taking 2 licensed teachers full days a week, and it was an expensive program to run for the number of families. So we were having to constantly, again, show that impact, right? But the reason we had a waiting list, I think, is almost all of our referrals either came from our own staff who was working with families, usually through like the Birth to 3 special education program, or from ABE is where most of our referrals came from. they wanted every family to get into family literacy. And I had to constantly meet with them and explain how we only had a certain number of spots. We can't just take 85 children in a room, you know? So they were the ones who were on board with getting them into family literacy. So I'm not sure if there's kind of a breakdown in relationship there for you guys, or if it's just that their families have other places for the children to go. Because one other thing I'll add is a lot of times ABE teachers also called it childcare, and we had to constantly work with them on, it's an education program, it's ECFE, it's family literacy, please don't call it childcare. But that's kind of, I think, was the motivation for them to refer, was that they wanted the families to have childcare. So
I can say that's kind of what happened in our Prior Lake Savage district as well. We used to have it, and then we offered it without any children component. And then it just kind of changed the whole point of it, right? So I don't know how that evolved to that, but I suspect it was the expense.
Well, the other thing too is the we're in the same building, you know, so we're right down the hall. We were in the same building before, but it just the parents don't seem to want to bring their kids to school. We have a very robust community school, Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and the parents love to drop their kids off at childcare and go to Zumba. So I feel like there's just been a shift in what they feel they need or is important. A lot of the moms have gone back to work. But Carrie, that's a really great idea. I'm gonna talk to see who we can talk to about getting those referrals. Because yeah, it's just dead. It's just, and I feel like there's, with a large Latino community that we have in Northfield, it shouldn't be dead. So, but thank you. That's a good place to start. I mean, it makes sense. And the problem too is that because it's been dying for so long, honestly, like Tuesday afternoons, I was like, oh, it's a lot of, it's a lot of work for 2 families or 3 families coming. And so truth be told, I don't have a lot of energy for it because it's been so small. So it's just not exciting when you only, you have 3 families registered and 1 family comes, and then you have to work with 1 family for an hour and a half. It's hard. So we don't have a ton of energy for it because there hasn't been that energy, so.
yeah, another thing, Ellen, when I started coordinating what I did, attendance was a really huge issue. And if we couldn't have them attending, we couldn't serve them at all, right? So
Right.
that was like number 1 priority, I thought. And we kind of developed an attendance policy, which sounds like a little bit harsh,
No.
but we did it in a way that wasn't harsh, so that we kept statistics on, when you arrive, we would sign you in what time you arrive. When you leave early, we sign you out that you left early. When you're absent. And then at the end of the month, every family would get, we called it a report, an attendance report. But the parent educator would have a one-on-one with each family to show them, okay, here's what happened last month. Noticed you missed a couple times. Do you remember why? And then we had this whole list of questions where we could kind of coach them through things about what were the barriers of attendance. And so to try to help them improve next month, kind of make a new goal. So it was very relational, right? Not as if you miss 3 times, you're out, because that's
Right.
kind of how they were doing it before.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, all of them, that was a selling point for the ABE teachers too, because they were like, those family literacy parents, they attend, they don't miss class like the others do. And they're like, what are you doing? And
Yeah.
so then we kind of taught them the model, keep the stats, have a one-on-one, ask these questions, talk about
Sure.
what can you do when one of your children is sick? Do you have a backup? Blah, blah, blah. All these things that come up for them, right?
Sure.
And it kind of gets at some of that culture of poverty stuff too, that, well, my sister called and she needed a ride. I can't say no to a family member needing a ride. And then it's like, well, remember, that's really hard, but you're choosing then not to pursue your education.
Yes.
Can your sister do something? It's like this shift in thinking of well, I never thought of that. Or they would be, a really common one was well, I had a doctor's appointment for my child.
Stop making doctor's appointments during school time.
Well, but you know what? They were like, I can't say no to that, can I? When they say I have to bring my child to the doctor on Tuesday at 1 o'clock on February, whatever, I could say no. Can I? And they're like, I'm like, yes, you can say no. You can say that won't work for me. I have school. I need another day. And you would be surprised. There were a lot of parents that didn't know they could do that. It was sort of like an authority thing and a cultural thing that they needed to respect that nurse or that doctor and be there. So all these pieces, you know, started to come out and then they could attend. So anyway, just thinking about that too.
Really great information. Thank you. Well, thanks guys. I just wanted to pick your brains a little bit and just start the conversation. I know it's now 1:06, so.
Well, Ellen, actually, I was reading the chat and I see that Karen had to leave and she said she'd be glad to add to this topic at another time. Would you mind if we started with this next week?
Not at all. That'd be
Because
great.
I think it touches on a lot of, I think a lot of people because a lot of people had to leave. I think and Carrie's just offered so many wonderful and very practical and very family centered ideas. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll hold it in the back of my pea brain and we'll start with this next week.
Fabulous.
Okay.
Definitely gonna watch the recording. I won't be here next week. And family literacy is like one of my top loves. So I will watch the recording.
Maybe we should wait.
It's okay. It's okay. You go for it. I gave you a few things anyway.
You did. And I will say, Carrie said, and then I'll
be excited to listen to it later.
Awesome. Thanks, friends.
Okay, everybody, take care.
See ya.
Thank you. A good week. Bye.